In this next chapter, 3D models, I would like to talk a bit about how to import into an A-frame scene external 3D models that are usually made with 3D modeling software such as Maya or Blender or wherever software, 3D modeling software you would like to use. Again, one initial warning. So it's always important to keep these things in mind. The warning is that these 3D models that we can create ourselves in this 3D modeling software, or that we can download from the internet, they can be quite complex and heavy. Heavy in the sense that the files can be quite large, but also heavy in the sense that they can be made from a lot of individual polygons. So this actually has two implications. The first one, so if a file is very big, this means that it will take a lot of time to download. And so this means that when a user accesses your 3D scene, your 3D environment, you will have to wait a bit before it downloads completely into his smartphone or into his device. Now, this is in itself, it's not very worrying. So, and I won't be dealing with this, worrying about this very much. So, it just means that users have to wait a bit before they can experience the environment. But so after all the models and all the assets are downloaded, then the environment will run okay. The other implication, so if a model is heavy in terms of the number of polygons that it has, so it might be a very complex object with lots of polygons, usually triangles. This means, or may mean, that the computer will have to dedicate more processing power to rendering the environment. And this is more worrying because if the environment is very, very complex, it has lots of polygons to render, then the scene may not run as smoothly as we would like. And so our scenes should run at the minimum of around 60 frames per second in order for it to run smoothly and not to cause sickness in our users. Because if they are with a headset, particularly if they are experiencing the scene with a headset and not on the desktop, then it's important to have a high frame rate. Otherwise, it may cause VR sickness, as we talked about in the beginning. So we have to be careful about the number of models and the complexity of the models that we use in our scenes. Now, having made this warning, let's see how, given what kinds of 3D models we can easily use in our 3D scenes. A-frame supports, it mainly supports two types of models. So these correspond to file formats. One of the types is this glTF format. And the other one, so this is a kind of a more recent format, optimized for delivery through the web. And the other format is this OBJ, which is actually a kind of a very old and standard 3D format. You will find, so some of you have already asked me if you can import other types of 3D models. And well, the answer is actually yes. There are a few other model formats that you can import, but that requires the use of external components. So it's not something that is part of the core of A-frame. And I will not talk about those. So because I haven't used, so I don't have much experience with those components. I know that they exist, but I haven't used them much. And also, it's usually easy to get access, at least to an OBJ version of a 3D model. So this is a very standard format. Any 3D modeling software will export in this file format. This may be because it's a newer format, so this may be a bit more difficult to generate, but I think that currently most 3D software will also generate this file type. So let's see how we can use these models and where we can find them. If we don't want to model our own objects, I'll give you some alternatives for finding these models and using them in your own A-frame scene. So let's see, I'll show you first an example of a 3D model that is loaded onto a scene. And you'll see immediately, you can see it right now that the scene takes a bit to load. So it was initially just white. So the model was still loading in the background. So because this is a large file. And so this, you can see it. So this is a 3D model of an avocado sliced in half. So how do we import, how do we use a model such as this one in our A-frame scene? Again, as most things, we will import these models using the asset management system of A-frame. So inside that A assets element, we will include kind of a generic assets element, which is this A assets item. And for each item, we will assign an ID and a source. And so the source, I'll talk a bit more about this in a minute. The source is simply the URL for the model that we want to import into our scene. So this will just tell A-frame that we wanted to download a 3D model. Then to actually include the 3D model in our scene in a given location, for example, we will use another primitive, another element, which for glTF models is called the glTF model. And in this element, so this will act like any other primitive, which we will be able to position, rotate, scale, etc. We will so assign a position, we may assign a scale, and we will tell A-frame where the source for this model is by using that scheme that we have been using already for other asset items. So we will just use the ID of the asset that we used in the assets element. One of the things that's important also to be aware of, particularly if you are not the author, if you are not the creator of the 3D model, but sometimes even if you are the creator of the 3D model, it's easy to get the scale of the object wrong, or put it in other words, when we are importing a 3D model, or creating a 3D model, it's sometimes hard to know exactly what scale that model should be, or what scale that model has, and guarantee that it is at a scale that matches the rest of the objects in our scene. So it's very common when using these 3D models for us to have to explicitly scale them up or down to make sure that they match, the scale of the model matches the scale of our environment. So I'll show you in this previous example. So let's go to the source of this first example. And I'll change the scale. So I'll just put 1, 1, 1. So this will actually not scale. So a scale is like a number that you multiply. So if you multiply by 1, you're not changing anything. So let's reload the scene. And now you see that given the position of the object, it's much smaller. In this case, in this particular example, because there are no other objects in the scene, it's very hard to understand what the scale of this object is, or whether whether it is, if it is a correct or wrong scale. So I'll just add here quickly in this example a box with a standard size. So I'll just position it more or less at the same distance that the 3D model. And maybe I'll give it a color because my scene is white. Okay, so now we have a kind of a sense of the relative scale of the objects. So this box is 1 meter in every dimension, and now we have a relative notion of the scale of this 3D model. Now for a fruit, the scale is probably okay, actually, but we may not, so this might be something completely different. And so, for example, we might be expecting this model to be the same size of this box. So if that's the case, then we need to explicitly scale the 3D object when we are including it. And one way to do that, to understand or to know what is the correct scale, it's just by trial and error. So we can just include the object, open the visual inspector, and then put some other object for comparison in the scene, like this red box, and then we can just scale the object using, for example, this tool, or just by writing directly here in the properties panel. But it's usually easier to do this interactively, visually. So in order to scale uniformly along the 3 axes, you can just use the scale tool and then just grab that center box, and then just scale the object by clicking and dragging until it has a dimension that we feel is okay. So you see here, I've scaled this 8 times. So it will be, if I then paste this in the example, the scale values, so the object will be 8 times as large as it initially was. And that's roughly the scale that it was initially in the example. So this is a very common thing for you to do. I'll just put the example back as it was. It's actually Um, Actually, sometimes the scale of the objects that we import is so small that they are hard to see in the scene, and often we might think that there's a problem loading the models because we don't see them appearing where they should. But sometimes they are there, but they are just tiny little objects that's impossible to see. So you really have to pay attention to that, and the easiest way is to do just as I did. So uh, when your scene loads, just open the inspector and then look for the model in the scene hierarchy, and you can just, if it is really small, then you can just press the F key. I'll put this back at the scale of 1 as it was. You can just press the F key and it will focus on the object. So if it was really loaded, you should see something. If the object is not here, or if the element is there, but when you focus, you still don't see anything, then you might have a problem. But do this first before you try to look for errors in your code, because there might be no errors in your code. Maybe it's just the model that's very, very small. Also, another thing to be aware of is that, as you saw, these models may take some time to load. So you may have to wait a few seconds for the model to really completely load. One way to check that, it's not as friendly, it's not as easy, particularly if you don't have much HTML coding experience, but there's a tool in all browsers, or most browsers at least, that you can use to see if there is anything going on in the network. And you can see if your 3D model is still loading, and if so, then you have to wait a bit more. So that's also might be a way for you to kind of diagnose what is happening in your scene. So if you want to know if some asset is still loading, you can go, I'm using a kind of a version of Chrome, and so this would be exactly like this in Chrome also. If you use Firefox, things are in a different location, so you'll have to search. But basically you have to search for the developer tools. Usually they are called like this. So I'll go here to more tools, and then developer tools. This will open up a panel. I'll just reduce that panel a bit. And then here at the top, we have a number of tabs. I will choose the network tab. In Firefox is something similar. And then we can just reload the scene. And this will show you all the network connections that the browser is currently doing. And so we can see that there's an activity here, something is still loading. And so while there's something here moving, then we know that the browser still downloaded something. When it finishes, as it is right now, then everything was downloaded. And at this point, we should see something. If we don't, then it might be that scale problem I was mentioning. And so you just have to open the inspector, look for the model here in the scene hierarchy, press the F key to focus. If the model was very, very tiny, you might not see it here also. So that's kind of a way to try to diagnose the issue. If you do these steps and you still haven't found the 3D model in your scene, then there might be a problem with the URL or with the model itself. But so try to do this step by step. Otherwise, you will waste lots of time trying to figure out what is happening to your models. So, as we saw, it's fairly easy to include the model. Once we have the URL for it, it's fairly easy to include it in our 3D scene. So where can we find this particular type of models, glTF? So of course, one way would be to model ourselves in Blender, for example. and then exporting to this format, glTF. But of course, modeling is something that's it's outside of the scope of this class, and it's something that may take you some time to do if you really want to model something in detail. And there are lots of alternatives for us to find these 3D models that we can use in our scenes. So one way or one place where we can find lots and lots of models is on Sketchfab. Now I'll open here the site. So Sketchfab, you probably know about it. It's like a repository for 3D models where you can upload your own models, and you can even sell models. So some of these models are for buying, but lots of models are free to use. So one way for us to incorporate 3D models in our scene is just to go here, look for a model. You can search the models by name or by keyword, and there are lots of models, very complex models, some very detailed models that we can just download and then include in our scene. As I said, some of these will be free. Some of these will be paying models. But of course, you should for this, at least for this project, you don't need to buy any model. You'll probably be able to find a suitable model, a suitable free model for you to use. So this is one possible place to search for 3D models. Another slightly or a lot less, a lot smaller place is this GitHub from this Chronos group, which is actually the group that kind of drives this format, glTF. And here you will find a few models, not as many as in Sketchfab, of course, but you can go through these. For example, the avocado that I was using in the previous example was taken from this repository. And you will find some other models, and maybe one of these might be perfect for your scene. So one of the problems that we have once we find a model that we can use in our scene is where to put it for it to have a URL that we can use then in our scene. And that's a problem because glitch doesn't easily allow us to upload a folder. And most of these models, they are made up not just from a single file, but they need lots of files. There's usually at least one main file that describes the model and the geometry, and then, for example, lots of smaller files, image files that have different textures that the model uses. So usually we need to upload not a single file, but a folder of files, and they all need to be in a single folder. And glitch doesn't allow us to do this. So that's kind of one limitation of glitch. But we can go around it. So we can find another platform to host our 3D models, and then we can just upload the models there in that platform, get a URL, and use that URL in our project. And so kind of the recommended way and the recommended platform for this is to use GitHub, and I'll show you how to do that. So this image was just to show you that, for example, this glTF model, if you open this file in your browser and if you scroll down, you'll see this kind of references to other files. So this was really just to show you that this glTF file actually depends on other files. So we really need to be able to upload a set of files, and sometimes there are lots of files. What I suggest that you use, and this is actually what A-Frame itself advises for us to do, is to use GitHub. So I'll show you not how to create an account, not how to register, because that's easy. I'll just show you then the steps after you have an account, what steps you need to take in order to be able to upload a 3D model and then use it in A-Frame. These steps are actually detailed in this chapter, but I'll show you because I think if you are able to follow as I describe these steps, then it will be much easier, because there are lots of small steps, and sometimes following these pictures is not really the most easier way to do this. But still, if you miss something, then the steps are detailed here in this section of this chapter. So the first thing is to go to GitHub and create an account. So of course I already have an account. Maybe I'll try logging out just to show you what it looks like. So there's immediately a panel in the main site to register. Here, I'll just sign in with my account. So after you have an account, you will, of course, your interface will be different from mine. I already have lots of stuff here going on. But mainly what you will have to do is to create what is called a repository in GitHub. And you'll just need to create one. Then you can upload everything to the same repository. So this step you only need to do once. So after you log in, then you can go, you can click, you can go to your repository list, or actually I think you can just click here at this plus sign and just choose new repository. Okay, so the first option, new repository. And here you will have to choose a name for the repository. So you just have to find a name that is available, and it will tell you immediately. It must be, I think it must be public. I'm not sure if you can create a private repository with a free account, so it should be public. And then you can just, actually, I'm going to check this box here to make sure that the repository has already a file in it. I think this makes the following steps a bit easier. This is just a dummy file that it will create. And then you can just hit create repository. I won't do it here because I already have a repository for this glitch project, so I'll use that. But so after you create here a repository, you won't need to do anything else in that. So you'll just need to upload then the files for that repository. There's no other step to configure this repository. So I will just go back. So after you have created a repository, then you are ready to upload a model to that repository and get the URL for that model. And the way to upload to a repository is, and I'll show you kind of the way that always works, even if you have just logged in and you had already created the repository before. So after you log in, you can just go here, click on your avatar here at the top right, and on the drop down, you'll see your repositories option. Just click there. And you'll have just one. I have lots of repositories, but you'll just have the one that you have created. And you can just click the name of that repository. And now in this screen, we are able to upload files. So before in order for me to upload a model, I will first download one from Sketchfab. So I'm going back, I'm leaving GitHub in this screen. Let's go back to Sketchfab and just download a random model. So let's find one that is free. Maybe I'll try finding one that is smaller so it doesn't take much time to download. Let's see if we can filter here. So downloadable. And maybe we can download a pet. And it would be nice if we could filter by free models. I'm not seeing that option here. Maybe I'm missing it. I think it used to have that, but no. So let's just skip the ones that have a price here. And for example, this low poly frog seems appropriate. So low poly means it's a very simple model. Let's see if we can download it, and let's see if it has glTF version. So some models don't have the glTF download option. So after we open the model, we can interact here with the model, so we can inspect it. And then there's a button here. And this button, I think, only appears if you have logged into Sketchfab. So you might need to create an account also on Sketchfab. I'm not sure because I have an account, but I think you do need to have an account also here. So I'm going to hit this download 3D model. And now we can see the options. So there are, depending on the model, you will see different options to download. So here, I'm going to download this glTF format, which is actually something that Sketchfab is doing automatically. So it's not a creator of this model that has exported in glTF, but Sketchfab will automatically convert to glTF for us. So in these situations, for some models, the conversion may not be optimal, so you will have to check, and if it doesn't work, try finding another model. So I'm going to download this version, and it's done. And it's a zip file, as you can see. So we will need to extract the files to a folder. And I'll just open the folder just to show you that there are several files in there. So we have the main file, which is, in this case, it's called scene.gltf. There's another file called scene.bin. And then there's a subfolder with textures. And in this case, it's a single file, but it might be several files also. So we have a folder that represents our model, which is this low poly frog folder. And this is the folder that we need to upload to GitHub. So how do we upload to GitHub? Let's go back to our GitHub account. We are inside the repository that will host our 3D models. And there's a button here called Upload Files. Let's hit that button. And then we will just drag the whole folder. And this is important. You don't drag the files, or you shouldn't drag the files. You should drag the folder. That will make sure that inside our repository, things are structured in a nice way. So I'm going to open my file explorer and just drag the folder. Now this model is very small, so it will upload very quickly, but you need to be careful. So for very large models, Uploading may take some time. You need to make sure that you wait for all the files to have been uploaded. Okay. Then you can just write here what's called a commit message. This is something particular to GitHub, which is for code versioning. So you can just, I usually just write something like this, uploaded, and then the name of the model, low poly frog. And then just hit the commit changes button. And so now our model is uploaded to our GitHub repository. We just need to find the URL for it. But that's also very easy. So you just enter the folder. So in my repository, you can see I have additional folders, but the one that I have just uploaded is this one, low poly frog. I'll click the folder. We see several files here. The main file is the one called with the extension glTF. So we click that file, and now here we see the contents of the file. We're not interested in the contents. We need the URL, the directory URL to the file, and that's available here in this raw button. So we can just click raw, and it will show us also the contents, but now you see that we don't have anything else in the window. So this is actually the direct link to that file. So this is the URL on our browser's address. This is the URL that we need to use in A-Frame. So we can just copy and then go back to our A-Frame code. I'll just show you here in this same example. We can just paste the URL in the source attribute for our asset item. So I'll just change the URL here. I'll leave everything else as it was, and I'll just reload the scene. Actually, so we don't see anything. So let's go through those steps to try to diagnose the issue. So I'm first going to open that developer tools that I mentioned. I didn't go through the menu because I know the shortcut. Select network and just refresh. And let's see if it's downloading the model. And we can actually see the file name here, so glTF, so it seems to have been downloaded. So we should see something here. So let's open the inspector and select the glTF model and focus on it. And we see something. So the model is there. Apparently, this is a scale problem. So now I removed that box that was here for comparison. So I don't exactly have a way of scaling this because it's without a reference, it's impossible to know the relative size of the object. So I'll just scale this. I'll just put a very big, very large number and see if it works. So I'll just put here 100. So kind of a tenfold increase. And then go back to the scene and still nothing, apparently. This is not a very good scene because it's completely white without any other object, so not very easy. So let's multiply this even more. And if this doesn't work, I'll just put an object for comparison. No, it's still not here, so it's really let's put back our box and see if we can diagnose the problem. So let's again make this red and give it a position near the 3D model. And let's reload. So the model was there, we saw it in the inspector, so we should be able to make it appear. So I focused on the model and now I'm zooming back. There's something really weird here. So the model is really at a very strange scale. Now we found the problem. It wasn't small, it was very big. So we were apparently inside the model. So it's very nice that this happened, because I didn't mention this, that this might be kind of a consequence of having a wrong scale on the model. So if the model is very big, then we are inside the model, and usually by default from the inside we don't see the faces of the model. So the model is only visible from one side as other 3D objects in A-frame. So we don't see anything, even though it is there. And so when I focused on the model, it's really hard to tell whether this model is very large or very small. There's a queue actually that I'm seeing here, which is the representation for the ground, but I missed it initially. So the model is very big, so we have to do the other way around. So let's put this first at 111 and see how it looks now. Let's focus on the box. So it's now visible, but you see that this is a very big frog head. So our box has 1 meter in size, and where did it go? Oh, I just did something. Okay, let's get this back as it was. I hit some key and I messed up. So let's put this model back in default scale. Okay, so now we see, and we see that the head is a lot bigger than our boxes, which was 1 meter in every dimension. So I'm going to scale this 10 times less, so 0.1. So now it's, we might adjust this further, but it's okay. It should be enough for us to see something. So I'm just going to check that it's really okay now and put a scale of 0.1 on the model and then reload. So now we see our model and we see the box. And you also notice another thing. I'm not going to correct it here because you know how to do this, but the model is backwards. So when I load the scene, I'm seeing the head from the back, and I probably wanted to be rotated 180 degrees. So, but that's easy to do. Just have to rotate along the y-axis. So I'm not going to do that. Okay, so it's nice that this happened because it might happen to you also. So another consequence of the wrong scaling of the models to be aware of. So basically, this is what we have to do to get the model, to download the model from Sketchup or anywhere else and upload it to our GitHub account, get a URL, and use it in A-frame. Again, I know this is a lots of steps. If you have not been able to follow as I was describing because you had to create an account in GitHub, that's okay. Everything is described here in this chapter. So I'll just move on. Now, there are, as I mentioned in the beginning, in A-Frame, we can also easily import and use OBJ models. Really, there's not much new here to say. Just like glTF models, OBJ models are also typically made up from several files. So the process is very similar. You have to upload a folder to GitHub and then use get the URL for the file. One main difference is that sometimes you may need to, and I usually do this just to make sure everything goes okay, you actually need to tell A-Frame two different URLs. One for the main object file, which has this extension OBJ, and another for what's called the material file, which is this .mtl file, which is actually the file that describes the textures that the model uses. So instead of one URL, you have to include two. So basically, in the assets element, you include two asset items instead of just one to represent one single OBJ model. So you give it different IDs. I usually use this naming scheme, so some kind of name that describes the object, and then dash obj, so that I know this is the asset for the main file, and then dash mtl to describe this is the material file. And you get the URLs for this just like we did for the glTF. Just open the file in your GitHub repository and then hit raw button, the raw button. And then to use in A-Frame, we have a different primitive, a different element that we need to use for OBJ files. So instead of a glTF model, we use an OBJ model element. And we give it the source attribute, and the source points to the main file, but also the MTL file. And the MTL, so the MTL attribute points to the MTL file. And if we do this, then it's the same thing as glTF files. So again, the scale you probably need to adjust, the rotation, and then the position to define where the model should appear. So I'll just show you an example here, but really there's not much new to see. So this is a model that I actually took from Magica Voxel, which we'll talk about next. So two ways of importing, or two different types of models, glTF, OBJ, you can use either of them. One nice thing about glTF models is that they can be animated. And that's a very nice thing. So it can actually add kind of a nice twist to your A-frame scenes if you are able to find or to create an animated version of the model using glTF, because then we can control the animation in A-frame. So glTF supports animations in the file format. And the way to use, to control, in A-frame to control which animation we want to trigger in the model is by using an external component. So for this, the core of A-frame doesn't give us this functionality, so we need to use an external component. So we need to add this line, this script to the top of our file. And then in the glTF model element, we need to add another attribute, this animation-mixer attribute, And this is where we tell it what animation sequence we want to play in that model. And I'll show you exactly what this means. So I'll load this example 4. So again, as you saw, it took some time to load. And this is actually not a very nice model. It's kind of weird because the model comes with a floor. It's not just the animal, not just the wolf, comes with a floor, so it's not as flexible as it might have been, but that's okay. So it's just for illustrating the animation. So this is a glTF model that I downloaded from Sketchfab, and it includes animations, and you can see here. So I just included the model and I said in A-frame what animation clip I want to play, and you can see that it's playing that animation. So this is a very nice thing to have in A-frame. So how do we know what animations are there in the model, and how do we know what are the names of the animations to put here in this animation mixer attribute? So in this animation mixer attribute, you see that there's a property called clip. So this is the name of the animation clip, and then the name. In this case, it's kind of a weird name, but these names are assigned by the person that created the model. So anyone can create models and upload to Sketchfab and give these weird names. And so I'm playing the idle animation sequence where the wolf is just standing and just moving a bit his body. So how do we find what animations are there? Well, it's really easy through Sketchfab at least. I'm not sure, but I guess that if you import one of these models also, for example, to Maya or Blender, I guess you can also see this, but I really don't know how to do that, so I won't be able to explain it to you because 3D modeling is not really my thing. So I'll just show you how to do that through Sketchfab. So I'll open actually let me just open a new tab. I'll open the web page for this particular model. And this is the same thing for any other model that has animations. Not all models in Sketchfab have animations. But so for the ones that do, like this one, and you see here a different animation, you see that Sketchfab shows here at the bottom a drop down that you can just click and select. And these are the animation clips, the names that we can use in A-frame. So we have a walk cycle, here we have a creep, we have an idle, which was the one that I was using, and we have another on-site. So these are just the names that the creator of this model chose. So let's try, for example, I'm just going to show you a different animation running on A-frame. So let's just change the animation clip to 03 creep. And reload our example. And now we see a different animation running. So it's as easy as this. You just need to know the animations available and then just select the one that we want to play. Also, another warning that's also here in the chapter, for some models like this one, so some models in Sketchfab, they have been made for being used in scenes with different lighting conditions. So you may need to spend some time choosing the right model for your scene, or as I did in this example, let me show you the source code. You might need to to adjust the lighting on your scene, as I did here. So you can see that I added an extra light beyond the default ones. And I actually used a very high intensity because the model was very, very dark and hard to see. So this is a problem with external models that were not made by us because we don't control these things. So, you need also to keep in mind this aspect. So this is it for using 3D models in A-Frame.